Well, thanks everybody for coming. We really appreciate the opportunity to come here. We just want to offer a little Senate Republican perspective as we go on and where we're at in terms of our state of the state, and give Governor Whitmer a little grade on where things are at under her leadership. And unfortunately, she's gotten enough over the last few years, and we've seen this because right now here in Michigan, it's just been tougher and tougher for families to make it here in Michigan, our job creators to make it here in Michigan, and especially at this point, our kids to make it here in Michigan. So I'm joined by Senator Theis, Senator Runestad, and Senator Lindsey to talk about how as Senate Republicans, we want to make it easier for everybody to make it here in Michigan. But you look at it, bottom 10 state in income. The median family income here in Michigan is $9,000 less than the median family income nationally. That makes it tough. And yet we spend more, have the highest energy bills in the Midwest, highest insurance rates in the Midwest, and some of the highest taxes in the Midwest, and it becomes tougher and tougher for families to actually make it here. I was in Gladwin recently, and there was a guy there that moved from Tennessee to Michigan. He said he started adding up all his expenses, insurance, utilities, local taxes, and he said he came up that it costs $5,000 more to live here in Michigan than Tennessee, where he came from. And I don't know about you, but as a farm boy, $5,000 is a lot of money. And then our job creators, we've seen it over the last 30 years, over the last 20 plus years, we've only seen about a third the increase in GDP growth that you've seen nationally. We're starting to lose population again. If we do nothing, if we just keep the status quo the way it is here in Lansing, we're likely going to lose up to 700,000 people in the next 30 years, according to the statistics that we see. And so that's the wrong place. You've seen the growth in bureaucracy and red tape here in Lansing under Governor Whitmer. It just becomes exhausting to watch, and his job creators try to invest and grow here in the state, and they're having difficulty to. I look at a local manufacturer in West Michigan. They build boats over in Holland, and they're 700 employees, fourth generation business, and they're trying to replace their docks on Lake Macatawa. And they're 4 years in, nearly $2 million of legal and engineering costs, and they still don't have a permit from Whitmer's bureaucracy to replace their freaking docks here in Michigan. Capitol follows the path of least resistance, and what we've seen with this governor, repeal of right to work, higher income taxes, a bureaucracy that's stifling investment and opportunity here in the state. It makes it tough for job creators to make it here in Michigan. But most importantly, it's our kids, and you see this with our children. We're bottom 10 state right now in education. That's a disaster. When 3 out of 5 fourth graders can't read at grade level, and we know if they're not reading at grade level, they have a nearly 70% chance of doing one of two things in their life. That's either being on social welfare at some point or in jail. That paints a very grim and dark picture for the future of Michigan. We're here to paint a very different picture for the future of Michigan, where every kid can read, every parent can have choice, and we bring back trades into our schools. But when you're 44th in reading, bottom 10 in science, it becomes a real challenge to make it here in Michigan and for our kids. And so I appreciate you guys coming here and covering. And unfortunately, what we've seen out of Governor Whitmer and this administration, she gets a straight F, failing grade. The only fortunate thing about today is that this is her last state of the state, and we have a real opportunity to turn the state around. So with that, wow.
Thank you very much, and I thank you for the opportunity to speak about something I'm extremely passionate about. Michigan is an incredibly beautiful state to live in. We have amazing citizens, and we have incredible children that should be doing at least as well as the average. But they're not. We are failing them, and it's gotten significantly worse under Gretchen Whitmer. There's no excuse for us to be where we're at. We have amazing colleges, but getting our kids into them is incredibly difficult. What we've done, what the governor has done over the last few years is weaken reading standards, not increase them. She's weakened them. They've ended requirements for us to look at our teachers and just know which ones are doing a good job and which ones aren't. I would challenge any of you to keep an employee where you don't look at their work product. Our kids need to be learning, and our teachers need to be able to do it. We actually know the answers. We'll get there. We eliminated the easy A to F standards so that our parents can know. There's recently been a poll that shows that parents think we're average for our schools. Our public schools are not average. Our public schools are doing really, really badly, and we know the solutions. The governor, I commend her for deciding that she needed to start working on reading. We've been asking her to do this for 7 years. She literally vetoed scholarships that would have helped the most vulnerable kids. I don't know why, but I'm hoping we're going to start to improve them. We need scholars. So the best determinant for whether or not the kids are going to be literate is whether or not their parents are good readers. The only way to break into that is to actually have literacy coaches and to have tutors. But no, we vetoed that. We're already spending record amounts on our kids. So we can sit a kid on a pile of money, but that is not going to help them figure out how to read. And you've heard the numbers. The numbers are significant. Our kids are not proficient in reading. The reality is only about 25% of them are proficient by the time they hit 4th grade. And we know that that drives our economy. Good readers become good students, get good certifications, get college degrees, and become good employees. This goes all the way up the chain. We can figure out how to help our economy if we just help our kids. Republicans have solutions, and actually other states have already figured out how to do this. So we have proof. They call it the Mississippi Miracle. And you know what they did? They have a read by grade 3 law that they actually enforce. Kids aren't socially promoted. Kids have to learn how to read. They bring the support systems around them to help them learn how to read, and then they promote them into 4th grade. That's taken Mississippi from 49th to among the top in the country. And if you make the adjustments for poverty, they're number 1. So what we're doing here is the worst. What they're doing there is the best if you want to help poverty-stricken, vulnerable children succeed. We need to reinstitute the A through F. We need to restore teacher evaluations. We need to teach the science of reading. Phonics actually works. We know it works. So the big picture is that our state future depends on whether or not we get education right. We need to be focused on that. Like I said, we know the solutions. We got to get back to teaching the basics. Reading, writing, arithmetic. Our schools should be focused on that, on science, on literacy, and helping to promote our kids, but not ignoring the problem, which is what we've done the last 3 years. We've figured out how to ignore the problem. Obviously, that's not working. So, thank you. I appreciate the opportunity. We have the solutions. They're in front of us, and we can make them happen.
Senator Runestad.
Thank you. I agree with my colleagues that the governor has been doing an atrocious job, and I think that the word has got to get out there about what she has done, what she has promised to do. She has increased the budget by 40% since she took over, from $55 billion to $88 billion. In there was a $9 billion one-time surplus. And I was telling people, oh, we're going to be able to do so much with this $9 billion. We're going to fix infrastructure. $200 million went to the roads. And she said, fix the damn roads. Roads, look around Lansing, it's absolute garbage. So that was her #1 campaign promise, was not fulfilled. All that money was blown away. When you look at what she's done with administering the departments, the unemployment office lost $8.5 billion. $8.5 billion out of our unemployment office. The Michigan State Police is the worst in the nation. Not the troopers, they are phenomenal. It is the leadership. She has been covering for them scandal after scandal. It would take me the next 10 minutes going through all the scandals that any other leadership in any other state of Michigan in the nation would be gone. Why? Why is she hanging on to them? What is the reason? And I think the media should be asking questions. You have these people who are falsifying records, who used a vehicle that anyone else had been fired for inappropriately. And I'm just not hearing a lot of questioning about why are you retaining the head of the Michigan State Police when 98% of the troopers lack trust. What does it take to get her to act? Also, we have DHHS, a crash and burn disaster. Their foster care system, their CPS system, again, is probably the worst in the nation. I used to be a foster care parent. My wife and I, we saw the problems. Nothing has been fixed with the system. There's the longest running federal case against the state going back to 2008 for our child care system. It is still a disaster. I read the audit every single year. It's a disaster. Why doesn't she get people in place who have saved these kids? Hundreds of kids have died under the foster care and CPS system, and there is nothing being done by this governor to fix this. So there is so many issues that have been absolutely dropped, important considerations that she should have taken care of while she's here. She's flittering around the world. She's flying all over the place, glad handing and having a good old time. Well, back here in Michigan, we have a catastrophe based on so much of what she did. What she spent on all this money with her buddy getting $20 million on a no big contract for a company that didn't exist, so she could buy a $4,500 coffee maker, flying around the world at $11,000 and private jets, $800,000 in salaries for 6 months, all to her buddy who was the treasurer of the Democrat Party. Why isn't the media bringing this stuff up and asking real questions about what has occurred in her administration? So yes, I think the best news is that this is the last one. We won't have to hear about this again, and hopefully we'll get someone else in here who will do a proper job as governor.
Thanks, Jim. Always good to have the fire. That's all part of it. Senator Lindsey, you're from a border state, and we see the real difference in terms of population growth in Indiana. They've grown by nearly 1 million people over the last 25 years, right? To work state, lower income taxes, lower energy costs, lower insurance costs, and yet Michigan has just been stagnant, and we're going to start losing population massively. And you look at it, lower cost of living, easier job to do business, and valuing the basics in education. But Senator Lindsey, great to have your update on your report card on the governor and where we're at.
Yeah, thank you, Senator Nesbitt. And I'll mention off that comment, it's right, I live right near the border, but you also spoke earlier about somebody you talked to that moved from Tennessee. After I served in the military, I lived for a few years in Tennessee. And moving my family back here where I wanted to live, where I want to have my kids live, was incredibly difficult. The burdens that Michigan places on people moving from states that have lower taxes, all sorts of ingredients, better education system. But I wanted to take an opportunity today to just zoom out a little bit and say, you know, this is not just Governor Whitmer's last State of the State address. It's an opportunity for reflection. 8 years ago, she was running for governor, and anybody who gets the opportunity to fill that seat walks into an incredible opportunity to serve people. And any two-term governor has had a massive opportunity to make a real positive impact on their state. Really good leaders across this country, we've seen it. They can take over bad situations in state and make really good positive changes and leave their state better off. Tonight we have to reflect and look at the real state of the state after 7 years of her leadership. Michigan should be the leading nation in the country, and we are not. From education to infrastructure, from business climate to basic ability for families to thrive, Michigan is failing under her leadership. She has always had willing partners in Republicans in trying to make meaningful change to make the state better, but she's either resisted it or gone in totally different directions. All that said, I'm an eternal optimist. I remain hopeful that in her remaining year, that she will work with us on policies that can make a positive difference for people. I expect tonight we'll hear about a couple of them. I understand that the governor is legitimately interested in trying to help tackle some of the regulatory burdens that make it difficult to build housing in Michigan. I'm on board with that. The devil will be in the details, and hopefully we can work together on it. I think she'll also be talking about things like medical debt. Certainly an area that there's opportunity for bipartisan work, but I will say on that she needs to go a step further. It's not enough to try to help people who end up in a bad financial situation because of a broken system that delivers medicine. We need to tackle it on the front end. She has willing partners and legislation ready, but we need Democrats to take the step on passing medical price transparency legislation so that people can know what they're paying for when they receive medical services. So hopefully there are opportunities in this last year to work together. But no matter what, the people need to be honest. The governor should be honest. That in November, the people will have to have a full assessment of this. And hopefully we'll decide that we need new leadership that is actually committed to turning Michigan back into the thriving state that it can be and should be. Thank you for having me here today, Senator Nesbitt.
Senator Lindsey. So open up for any questions. So,
I'll begin. Thank you for hosting this. One thing I find
see, the Capitol Corps always like tries to butt in. You guys have something?
Oh,
You
sorry.
know, something special good, you know? You guys see me all the time, you know? You got something off the top?
I don't.
Okay, well, think about it. So, because, you know, these guys have been covering the Capitol. for-
I'm always
I mean,
cooking. I
yeah.
can't help it.
I still don't think you come up to Skubik's combined number of years yet, but give it a few years.
So one thing I think is so interesting about this lineup is that 3 of you guys were committee chairs in the Senate during the first term of Governor Whitmer's. For yourselves personally, what would you say was her biggest bipartisan fumble for yourselves, where you as a committee chair back then reached out for collaboration, insight, whatever, and you guys feel like you were personally slighted?
Well, I think you look back 6 years ago with the COVID lockdowns, my way or the highway is what Governor Whitmer said. And you hear the stories of nursing homes and hospitals, the people died alone. I mean, myself, I was, 6 years ago, we were expecting our second born. And I took my wife to the OB's office. I couldn't go in because of Governor Whitmer and the Democrats' lockdowns. I had to wait in the car, and I get a text from my wife saying we lost our second born to a miscarriage, and I couldn't be holding her hand because of Governor Whitmer and the Democrats here in Lansing. That's wrong. That should never happen again. And this is why you saw people around the state, whether they're small business owners, whether they're family members, lost loved ones in nursing homes, that we have started saying that no longer can you ever have one person rule. And this was something where it wasn't just about committee chairs, it was about usurping the power of the legislature. We had to sue her, we had to take her to court, we had to do petitions to actually reopen the state. And you look at the consequences today, is that the average student in public schools are 3/4 of a grade level behind just because of the COVID lockdowns right now. And yet when we passed tutoring scholarships to help with reading, she cruelly vetoed those. And so again, I'm always an eternal optimist. If we're going to improve the state, like what Senator Lindsey says, if it means that actually you get back to the basics of reading, writing, arithmetic for education, we slash the bureaucracy in Lansing to allow growth, and we cut the cost of living for working families, you're going to find working partners here. But if it's just all talk, like what we saw a year ago, again, was saying we're going to take on the permitting process and the bureaucracy, and we've seen nothing change, it's like an arsonist calling the fire department the next day. And believe me, this fall, with Republicans in the House and Senate and running statewide, we have the opportunity to win it back this fall.
I would like to also chime in terms of her governance, that when I was in the legislature, when Governor Snyder was there, he frequently came into the House, and he would go as much time to the Democrat side as the Republican side, over and over. I lost count of how many times. I have not seen her ever come through and talk to people. So when the Governor Snyder would go over and talk to the Democrats, he would get a feel for what is their experience. I have never talked to the governor at all, one time. Not even informally, like on the floor, which would be so helpful for her to get a feel for what does our side see. The other thing I was told is when the Democrats take power, all your fairness to them, Chairman, will be taken away. I passed more bills out of committee than I can remember for Senator Cheney, for Senator Geis, who were some of my strongest opponents, for Senator Singh, and there's no reciprocity. The minute that they get in, I have been shut down. Not a single bill I've ever put in has had a hearing. and just in terms of the decorum, how you're treated. I never, ever mistreated, and you can go back and look at 20 years of me being a chair in a county commission and state legislature, allowed the people in the committee to be screaming down people testifying who are outnumbered 100 to 1. That's the way they roll. Shut down the number of bills that come through from the opposite side, allow them to be screamed down in committee. So yeah, I think that it's incumbent upon the governor to lead, and she's led by not having any relationship with any of us by ever coming in and talking to us in my now 11 years being here and her 8 years in office.
Peter Nesbitt, what do you think of this idea the speaker's floating of limiting property taxes, cutting property taxes, and replacing the revenue with taxes on a bunch of services?
Well, first off, I'm going to work with anybody that wants to lower the cost of energy. We can start by repealing the Green New Scam that the Democrats passed on a partisan vote 3 years ago that's going to add another $2,700 to working families here in the state. That needs to be repealed. Stop the industrialization of hundreds of thousands of acres of farm and forest land that's jacking up energy rates. I mean, I was talking to a guy downriver just a few weeks ago, and he's saying, I can barely hit these energy bills anymore. It's just tough to pay them. And I have to put them on my credit card, and now there's a new fee on the credit card to pay them there. It's wrong with what Governor Whitmer's done on energy, and the cost of living has been tough to make it here. Property taxes, after 5 years of high inflation, you see it, you hear it as you go across the state. People are struggling. We make less here in Michigan. As I said, the median family makes $9,000 less in Michigan than that median family does nationally. And so I'm willing to work with anybody that's ready to cut the cost of government, cut property taxes, cut our taxes, and lower the cost of living and put more money back into hardworking families' pockets. But let's look first at waste, fraud, and abuse. You saw that with House Republicans last year, took a real lead on identifying billions of dollars of waste, fraud, and abuse. Let's start there before you talk anything about replacement costs.
So you're saying, see how many cuts you guys can make before you start talking
They're out
about,
there.
hey, we need to tax all these services.
I mean, it was said earlier, you look at it, 7 years, the last 7 years, that's nearly a 50% increase, going from $56 billion budget to the proposal of an $88 billion budget, that they're growing the size and scope of government, growing social welfare that's out there, doubling the size of government, twice the rate of inflation. We've been flatlined on population growth. We can find this waste, fraud, and abuse in the system. Let's look through that first. Got a question yet? Huh?
You know? All right. So my question that I have.
See, these guys aren't shy.
I'm shy. I'm sorry.
Who are you with? I'm sorry.
I'm with WILX.
Okay, great.
So if things don't change,
Yeah.
what is pretty much the path of Michigan's future?
Yeah, it's a grim future. And I don't want to be negative, but it's tough for families to make it here in Michigan when they're paying the highest energy rates, highest insurance rates, and some of the highest cost of government in the Midwest. And yet they're getting lower incomes than the average family nationally. It's tough for our job creators to make it here with the bureaucratic red tape that's just built up. We got to take a blowtorch to the bureaucracy that's around here. And we got to make sure that our job creators can invest and grow here in the state. In our kids, if we just keep the status quo the way it is, we're gonna stay a state that has a very grim future. And so if we do nothing, we're gonna be a poorer state with worse educational outcomes, with less job opportunities, and that means I'm gonna be visiting my kids, maybe someday grandkids, in another state instead of here in Michigan. My family's been in Michigan for 7 generations. We're gonna stay here. We're gonna fight, but if we just do status quo changes, we're gonna be a poorer state, worse educational outcomes with less opportunities. That's the wrong way to go. We gotta make Michigan more affordable, easier for job creators to do business here, and making sure that our kids are actually able to perform.
Wonderful. Thank you.
One thing I find, I know a second,
We
I'm
get
sorry,
two,
guys.
you know, you got one first? No,
No, you know, Riley and I went to college together. I'm surprised she's not ready for me to shut up now.
Oh, I'm actually Kristen.
Oh.
It's okay, we get confused all the time.
Yeah.
It's fine.
Okay, so my question is, I mean, one thing I find really fascinating is that, you know, the governor does appear to have a high approval rating. So what do you think is missing from the equation when it comes to the public having a high perspective on Gretchen Whitmer?
Yeah, unfortunately, this governor's been more concerned with selling books and on Martha's Vineyard than the reading scores of our kids here in Michigan. She's more concerned with being a social media star and traveling the world and trying to sell her public relations than actually solving the tough issues of bringing down the cost of living here for Michigan families, keeping more money in hardworking families' pockets, and making it easier to invest and grow jobs here in the state of Michigan. And unfortunately, what we've seen is that we've seen the mainstream media just let her have a pass. And so this is something where we've seen this since the COVID lockdowns, that she's using political science and polling data to make her decisions, and not the actual science and data and trusting individuals and people. And so that's unfortunately what's driven us to this point.
Good question.
You missed the best part. You missed my opening statement. Wasn't that a good opening statement?
My
Can't
apologies.
comment on that.
Yeah.
It's a question for any of you, maybe particularly Senator Lindsey, but anybody wants to weigh in. You mentioned the housing and local regulations. I wondered if you could talk about the pushback from local governments about, kind of preempting their ability on some zoning regulations. Why should the state, I guess, insert itself a little bit into local zoning?
So leave it to Cranes for technical details, huh?
Yeah. I think, like I said, the devil's going to be in the details on where that whole effort lands. There is concern, and it's fully appropriate that local governments are going to want to make sure that we don't do anything too crazy in that regard. I think the heart of the reform will focus on, like I said, it's regulatory reform. This is about barriers that make it difficult to build houses or to provide places for people to live. There are other pieces of, if you've seen the whole package, but there are other pieces in there that just do simple things like make sure that if a developer enters into an agreement, follows all the rules locally, and gets a final approval to build, that they can't 6 or 8 months later into the build have that local municipality come back and say, well, we want to extract some more money from you for an unrelated project because we know you're committed at this point. Things that just give certainty when you're building like that. I think that the piece about zoning gets way too much of the airwaves. People get very concerned about it. I get why. But I'll also just comment, there are a bunch of areas in Michigan where we have realized that it isn't always prudent to allow overregulation. It doesn't matter what layer of government's doing it. We don't tell our farmers in Michigan that they have to worry about a community coming up and saying, it's not appropriate in my area for you to grow soybeans. You can only do seed corn here. We give them a little bit of a layer of protection from the state, saying we're going to make sure that you're empowered to grow what works inside your cycles. So it will be a very nuanced, and I expect a challenging policy set to work through and find something that people can be comfortable with. But I appreciate the question.
Yeah, let's start right now with the fact that here in Michigan, that the Home Builders Association says the average new family home costs $95,000 just because of regulations, added on expenses. And that goes from federal, state, and local. That's adding it all up. And I remember talking to actually a home builder in your neck of the woods, Livingston County. That seems awful high. I mentioned that, the $95,000. I'm like, go look at your numbers. What building codes, the planning, the regulation, investment. Like, what number do you come up with? And he came back and he goes, it's $93,000. I don't know. That's pretty damn close in my estimation. But when the average new home owner, the age is 40 years old for the average new homeowner right now. And I was talking to a home builder in northern Macomb County that they're selling a ranch-style house, about 1,600 square foot new, for $400,000. I don't know, $95,000 in added regulatory costs. As a farm boy, that's a hell of a lot of money. $400,000 for a new 1,600 square foot house. That's a lot of money. It's just tough to make it right now in Michigan. we get out these criminal illegal aliens and free housing that this governor's been pushing over the last several years. That needs to be eliminated. 2, we got to get back to the trades, making sure that we get back to high school. And I think 25 years ago, told a lot of people lies where everybody has to go on to college. My sense is that if we're going to rebuild our economy, lower the cost of housing, improve manufacturing, rebuild our infrastructure, we've got to get back into trades. And I mean, Mike Rowe said it last year when he was speaking in Dearborn, every 5 people retiring from the trades, there's only 2 people replacing them. And so there's a lot of efforts that we can do to make sure that people can actually own their American dream instead of just running their American dream.
I got one more, time for one more question.
What is it?
Time for one more question.
What is it? What's the question? Gotta have a good one, huh?
I guess I'm kind of curious, regardless of how the speech goes tonight, obviously you guys are jumping.
It's gonna be a great response.
You're jumping into the budget, I guess. What's kind of, what would you guys like to see, maybe just you or any of you, what would you guys like to see be accomplished over this last year? The governor's administration kind of set the table for whoever is in charge next administration. What's possible?
I want to be hopeful that what they did over COVID to our kids and putting a lock on the schoolhouse doors and preventing them from getting an education, what they did in terms of repealing the accountability and standards in our schools, that I'm hopeful that we can go and have a 3rd grade guarantee, that we can actually update our high school curriculum to allow kids to access trades, and that we can work together to get the DEI and wokeism out of our schools and get back to saying that every kid should be able to read by the end of 3rd grade. Every kid should be able to be either college ready or career ready by the end of high school, and that we open up the trades. And so my hope is that we can find a bipartisan way of actually getting this done. Is we've seen other states do it, whether it was Florida 20 years ago, Mississippi 10 years ago, more recently with Indiana and Tennessee, states that spend a fraction that we do as a state on education. Because we don't get education right, man, the future of our state's grim. I don't know if you guys have anything.
I would agree with that. I've been working on especially early childhood literacy for 11 years, and Lon and I were on a bill package with Senator Irwin, and Senator Irwin and I had worked for years and years on this. Finally get it through. Not the best package, a lot of concessions had to be made, but they're not even going to implement it till next year. And this was passed last year. And it was like, so a whole new set of kids for the next couple of years don't get any intervention. When I was at the National Association of State Legislators, 400 legislators there, and they were talking about all the states and the science of reading, and one state, they said, is resistant. One state that they met with over and over again will not do anything for the reading of their kids. And I was looking around, I was the only one from Michigan, but I knew who it was, and I went up there and I talked to them and said, yes, it's Michigan. So all these years, Michigan's been the most resistant. We finally get something through, and it's 2 years from now. Why doesn't she get up today and say, listen, I'm making this change. We're going to implement this right away. It takes money, but my God, our kids are going down the tubes, and she's pushing this out. The Democrats are pushing it out for 2 years. By the way, Lon and I were taken off the bill. Like I was saying earlier, they never play by the same rules. But yeah, that's the thing I'd like to see first. Get this fixed with the early child literacy. Put it in this year.
Do you guys have any other ideas for how to improve early literacy? You talked about 3rd grade retention, which is kind of like someone who's already got a problem and then you're retaining
It's about.
You mentioned the
Well, this is the beauty. This is the beauty of our federalist system, is that you can look at other states and what they've done. And probably the most recent example is what they did in Mississippi 10 years ago. And some people call it the Mississippi miracle because, boy, they even have worse poverty rates than Michigan does. Real challenges in demographic rates. But instead of repealing our 3rd grade reading rules, what did they do? Phonics-based science of reading, standard curriculums, what's available, build up literacy coaches in the schools to allow these literacy coaches to teach that phonics-based science of reading, intensive tutoring for those that are falling behind. We passed a few years ago and this governor vetoed. And then the final bit is the read by 3rd grade guarantee. And we saw a Boston University study that come out last year saying actually those kids that were held back a year to saying we're not going to have this bigotry of low expectations, just to forward you along, that by 6th and 7th grade, that those kids that were held back were actually further ahead than those that weren't. And so it's building up our teachers, our students, to make sure that every kid can actually make it here in Michigan, and that's really the core of it. I don't think you have something in that.
So what we had originally set up and what got completely dismissed is that we were going to be assessing the kids early on, starting in kindergarten. We're just going to start to figure out what level they're at and how to help them. We're going to partner with them and partner with their parents in order to figure out how better to help them learn to read. Then by the time they get to 3rd grade, there's a full assessment, but they have literacy coaches and scholarships. Again, the opportunity to break into that area where if the kid lives in a household that isn't as literate or isn't as fond of reading, that they have somebody there who can help fill that gap. Because if you're poverty stricken, if you come from a household that doesn't have that, you need programs and services to step around that. So we provided that, and the governor vetoed it. She vetoed bills, and she redlined in the budget the opportunity for those kids to have those scholarships and those tutors in order to learn, to get around the hurdles. And it harms the poorest among us the most. And that's what breaks my heart when you were talking about what I would have liked to have seen as the education chair. When you're in K through 12, 4 years is a long time. 4 years is a lifetime. If these kids who could have been taught, who could have been helped in 3rd grade, if we're not even figuring it out until they're in 7th, we're not even teaching teachers the science of reading. We're not mandating that they learn that yet. We got pushed back so hard. We know phonics works. We know whole language doesn't. We have the solutions, and we got all the pushback and stopped that from happening. And that's, so for me, that's what breaks my heart. These kids deserve better, and we know the answers. It's not like we're not sure. There's a model out there for us to use, and we just haven't done it yet. I hope we can get on board with that. I hope it can be a bipartisan solution that we can actually get that over the line and understand that accountability and support metric and scholarships.
I got to add something to this too, just because, Craig, the way you asked that, I think you framed it totally incorrectly. You suggested that the 3rd grade reading law was about only addressing once there's a problem. And I'm not saying you didn't understand this as it's a policy set as a legislature, but that's not what it's there for. It's to build in a structural component that makes sure that they are reading by that point, and it really matters to families if you find out we got there, they actually checked, my kids aren't reading. It matters to the system. It changes the way the education is actually being delivered. In the whole time that I've been here, I've served for 3 years now, and I've seen reform after reform proposed from the Democrats on education, and virtually 0% of the time are any of their reforms actually in the context of what is going to lead to better education outcomes for the students. It's crazy. I mean, they go in and talk about everything in education except how do you get the kids to get a better education on this. So I don't think he meant to do it, but I think the framing of the 3rd grade reading, it's not about just some arbitrary. I saw an article recently that said that we now have some of the highest graduation rates that we've ever had in the state of Michigan. What does it mean for an education system to have highest graduation rates with some of the lowest performances on testing scores? That means our system is not doing its job. We should be sad about that. We just pass people through now. What's next? Is the next Democrat policy going to be, let's just sign their diploma when they start kindergarten and it really doesn't matter what happens after that? No, let's go in and make sure the system actually leads to good positive educational outcomes for the kids.
Governor can start by signing President Trump's tuition tax credit.
There we go.
Right
There you
there.
go. I'll bring that up again. So thanks, guys. Appreciate you. So appreciate you coming. Did you get enough? Any other thing?
We got it.
You come up with anything, or you got enough stuff? Okay.